We all know that Jesus once taught from a small boat on the Sea of Galilee, but have you ever stopped to imagine it? Not as a painting or a verse, but as something real? The water gently moving, a crowd so large it pressed to the water's edge, and one voice carrying across the waves. In today's video, we'll talk about that moment, so let's not waste any time and let's begin. The silence over the waters does not last. Word travels faster than the breeze, carrying from one mouth to another. He is here. Feet begin to gather from every direction. Sandals crunch against the pebbled shore. Fishermen leave half-mended nets where they lay. Merchants abandon small tables of figs and bread. Children tug at their mother's garments, rising on their toes to see past taller bodies. A blind man is led by the hand, his other clutching a worn staff. The sick are carried on makeshift mats, faces pale yet hopeful. Others come with no ailment, no visible pain, just questions buried deep inside. The air thickens with expectation. It is not loud, yet the quiet carries a weight all its own. There are whispers, some reverent, some doubtful. He healed the leper. He eats with sinners. Could he be the one? Skeptics fold their arms. Pharisees stand back, robes pristine, eyes sharp. They do not step forward, but they do not leave either. Jesus remains in the boat, just a few feet from land, where the water deepens to dark green. Simon Peter stands beside him, one hand on the rope keeping the vessel from drifting. The boat rocks gently, creaking as the waves brush against its sides. The shore curves like an amphitheater, holding thousands. It is as if the land itself leans in to listen. He does not raise his voice with force, and yet it carries, clear, steady, anchored in authority. No scroll in his hands, no platform beneath his feet, just water, wood, and words stronger than stone. People continue to arrive. A young boy climbs onto his father's shoulders for a better view. An older woman, wrapped in a faded shawl, kneels at the edge of the surf, her eyes glistening. Some are close enough to see his face, others hear only his voice, but they press forward anyway, drawn by something they cannot name. Simon glances at the shoreline. People keep pushing, stepping closer and closer to the water, so close their toes nearly touch the lake. Jesus speaks a few quiet words to him. Simon nods, loosens the rope, and pushes the boat a little farther out, just beyond reach. The water, like glass in the early light, ripples outward. The crowd shifts, resettles, but the attention doesn't break. It tightens, like a bowstring. Even the restless children grow still. The boat drifts just enough to create a pulpit carved not by human hands but by wind and wave. Jesus sits. Unlike the teachers in the synagogues who stand to assert authority, he teaches from a posture of calm. Yet the authority in him is undeniable. There is no barrier between sacred and ordinary here, only open water and open hearts. A fisherman at the edge of the group crosses his arms. He has heard many rabbis. What makes this one different? A tax collector lingers in the back, unsure if he should even be allowed to stand among the rest. A Roman soldier watches from a distance, hand on his spear, but eyes curious. Nearby, a woman who has endured pain for years clutches her cloak and dares to hope. Jesus surveys the multitude. He sees more than faces. He sees stories. The weary, the proud, the broken, the hungry, the curious. No one is invisible to him. Then he begins, not with law, not with instruction, but with a story. Listen, the word hangs in the air like incense. Conversations end. The lake hushes. The seabirds circling overhead fall quiet. A farmer went out to sow his seed. In a single moment, the crowd is transported, not physically, but in their imaginations, to a familiar scene. Fields at dawn, a man carrying a leather pouch at his side, scattering seed by hand. The story is simple, yet every line carries weight. The seed falls in different places, on the path, on rocky ground, among thorns, and on good soil. Some nod. They know this world of earth and harvest. Others sense there is more beneath the surface. Minds wrestle, hearts stir. Some understand only the image. Others feel the truth reaching deeper, pressing into places untouched by law or tradition. Along the water's edge, a young girl whispers to her brother, "He's talking about seeds." He shakes his head. "No, he's talking about us." Jesus finishes the story and lets it rest there, unexplained, like a seed itself. Whoever wants to understand will have to lean in, listen closer, stay longer. He looks across the sea of faces. The morning light glints off the surface of the water. The world feels suspended. Whoever has ears to hear, let them hear. The crowd remains perfectly still, as though the entire shoreline is holding its breath. The water glistens softly under the morning light, and Jesus' voice settles over the people like a gentle wind. A farmer went out to sow his seed. Some people glance at one another. It's a simple beginning, almost too simple. A few farmers in the crowd fold their arms, familiar with early morning fields and aching shoulders by noon. Others close their eyes, picturing wheat swaying under the sun, dust rising behind footsteps. As he scattered the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. A boy near the front scrunches his nose. He's seen this before, seed wasted on the hard-worn road where nothing grows except footprints. A flock of birds suddenly wheels above the lake as if echoing the words. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. Someone in the crowd nods. They have seen green shoots poking through thin soil over stone, reaching eagerly toward the sun. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched and withered because they had no root. Behind them, the shore heats beneath the rising sun. Dry wind brushes over skin. A man silently thinks of promises he once made to God, quick, bright, short-lived. Other seed fell among thorns which grew up and choked the plants so that they didn't bear grain. This time, no one moves. Everyone has felt the choke of worry, the slow tightening of greed or fear. Weeds grow faster than good things. It's something everybody knows. But still other seed fell on good soil. It came up, grew, and produced a crop, some 30, some 60, some 100 times what was sown. A quiet gasp ripples through the listeners. One seed producing 100-fold? That is abundance beyond calculation. More than any farmer could boast of, more than the land usually gives. Jesus pauses. He doesn't explain. He doesn't simplify. He doesn't rush. He just lets the words drift over the water into the spaces between hearts. Then he says, "Whoever has ears to hear, let them hear." The breeze picks up again. Some people look confused. Others stare at the ground, lost in thought. A Pharisee frowns. A widow near the front wipes a tear she can't explain. From the edge of the shoreline, someone whispers, "Is he talking about crops or us?" No one answers, because the answer lives quietly inside each heart. The parable is simple, but it unsettles. It does not demand agreement. It invites reflection. It is like a key offered but not forced into any lock. As the crowd murmurs, Jesus looks at them, not with frustration, but with patience. He knows some will walk away unchanged. Others will wrestle with these words in silence. A few, only a few, will let the seed sink deep. The disciples, however, are unsure. The parable hangs between them like morning fog. When the teaching pauses and Jesus leaves the boat, they follow him quietly to a more secluded place among the trees. Away from the crowd's noise, Peter is the first to speak. "Rabbi, why do you speak to them in parables? Why not just say it plainly?" Jesus sits on a rock beneath a fig tree, the sunlight weaving through branches and patterns dancing on his robe. He looks at them, not disappointed, but almost tender. Because truth, he knows, isn't just something heard. It's something received or rejected. He speaks softly. "The secrets of the kingdom of God have been given to you, but to others everything is spoken in parables, so that though they see, they do not perceive, and though they hear, they do not understand." The disciples grow quiet. Some shift uncomfortably. The words are not meant to exclude, but to reveal hearts. Those who truly desire truth will seek it. Those who only want wonder will miss it. Jesus goes on to explain the parable in clear, deliberate language. The seed is the word of God. The soil is the human heart. Some are like the hard path, hearts so trampled by life, pride, or dismissal that the word never even sinks in. The enemy snatches it before it can take root. Others are rocky ground, quick to receive, quick to rejoice, but just as quick to wither when the sun of hardship rises. Still others are among thorns, hearts filled with worries, the deceit of wealth, and the hunger for other things. The seed grows but cannot breathe. But then, the good soil. The heart that hears, holds, and allows time, storms, sun, and silence to shape it. That heart bears fruit, far more than anyone expects. The disciples listen. They do not fully understand, not yet, but something inside them shifts like soil being turned. Jesus rises again, eyes returning to the lake. The crowd still waits by the water's edge, watching. He walks toward the shore to teach again, and his voice carries a new story across the waves. The quiet spot away from the shoreline feels like another world. The distant murmur of the crowd fades behind them, replaced by the soft rustling of leaves and the rhythmic hum of insects hidden in the grass. Jesus sits on a smooth stone beneath the shade of an olive tree, and the disciples gather around him, still thinking about the story of the farmer and the seed. Their faces reveal uncertainty. Some look curious, others uneasy. Finally, Peter asks what the rest are thinking. "Why do you speak to the people like that? In parables? Why not tell them plainly?" Jesus looks at each of them, not with frustration, but with deep understanding. "Because," he says, "the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them." They're silent. Not because they fully understand, but because they feel the weight of those words. Jesus continues, "To those who have, more will be given, and they will have abundance. But whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken away." His tone is gentle, but the meaning is sharp. Truth isn't something forced, it's something received. It grows only in willing soil. He picks up a handful of dry earth and lets it sift through his fingers. "This is why I speak to them in parables. Seeing, they do not see. Hearing, they do not hear or understand." His voice softens. "But blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear." The disciples shift, some humbled, some quietly proud, and some more confused than ever. Jesus doesn't leave them in uncertainty. He begins to explain the parable of the sower in clear words, layer by layer, like a farmer turning soil. "The seed is the word of God," he says. "The path is the heart so hardened that the enemy snatches away the word before it can even settle. The rocky ground is the one who hears and receives with joy, but has no root. When trouble comes, they fall away. The thorns are the worries of life, the deceitfulness of wealth, and desires for other things. They choke the word and it becomes unfruitful. But the good soil," Jesus pauses, looking at them with quiet hope. "The good soil is the heart that hears the word, holds it close, and bears fruit, 30, 60, even 100 times what was sown." The disciples are silent again, but this time for a different reason. They aren't confused, they're convicted. Each in their own way wonders, what kind of soil am I? A breeze moves through the trees. In the distance, the sea sparkles under the sun. Jesus stands, and they follow. As they walk back toward the shore, he speaks again, not to answer their lingering questions, but to plant another story. "Do you bring a lamp and hide it under a bowl or a bed?" he asks. "No, you place it on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house." John glances toward the lake, where fishermen sometimes light lanterns at night, tiny flames bouncing on dark waters. Jesus continues, "Everything hidden will be revealed. Everything concealed will be brought into the open." Matthew, once a tax collector hiding ledgers and secrets, feels something tighten in his chest. This teaching isn't just about light, it's about exposure, honesty, and courage. Jesus looks at them again. "Consider carefully what you hear. With the measure you use, it will be measured to you, and even more." Ahead, the crowd waits near the water, unaware of the private conversation that just unfolded beneath the olive branches. Some people are seated on rocks, others stand in the shallows. Children toss pebbles, then stop as Jesus approaches. He steps back into the boat. The small waves lap against the sides, as though the lake itself waits for his words. The disciples sit on the shore now, watching. Jesus speaks once more, not a command, not a miracle, but another story. "The kingdom of God is like a man who scatters seed on the ground. Night and day, whether he sleeps or rises, the seed sprouts and grows, though he does not know how." A hush falls again. Farmers nod slowly. They know the mystery of unseen growth. Jesus goes on, describing stalk, head, full grain, then harvest. It is a quiet parable about patience, unseen work, and certainty. Then he tells them of another seed. "The kingdom of God is like a mustard seed. Though it is the smallest of all seeds, when planted, it becomes the largest of garden plants, with branches big enough for birds to rest in its shade." Some people smile at the image. Others whisper. The fishermen watch from their boats. And somewhere in the crowd, a child plucks a weed from the sand and holds it like a tree. Jesus continues to teach, story after story, planting seeds in every kind of soil. Hearts open, hearts resistant, hearts quietly changing. And the boat becomes a pulpit, the lake becomes a sanctuary, and the kingdom, like a seed, begins to grow. The morning sun climbs higher over the Sea of Galilee, glinting off the water like scattered coins of light. Jesus remains seated in the boat, the crowd still gathered along the shoreline. Some are leaning forward, elbows on knees, drinking in every word. Others remain guarded, arms folded, their expressions unreadable. But no one leaves. The last echoes of the parables drift across the lake, and then Jesus speaks again. This time not of seeds or soil, but of light. No one lights a lamp and hides it under a bowl, he says, or puts it under a bed. Instead, they set it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. Murmurs ripple through the people. They know this image well. In their homes, a single small clay lamp can chase the darkness from every corner. The poor, the wealthy, fishermen, carpenters, every home has seen that fragile flame flicker to life in the evening. Everyone understands. Jesus pauses, letting the simple image settle. Then his voice grows softer, yet somehow sharper. For there is nothing hidden that will not be revealed, and nothing concealed that will not be brought into the open. Those words strike differently. Some feel seen. Others feel exposed. A man in the crowd lowers his gaze. He thinks of dishonesty in his business. A woman standing behind him clutches her chest, remembering words she never should have spoken. Even the Pharisees, standing at a distance, shift uncomfortably. Jesus continues, "Therefore, pay attention to how you listen. Whoever has will be given more. Whoever does not have, even what they have at this have, will be taken from them." No one speaks. The words are not loud, but they cut with truth. Jesus is no longer talking only about lamps and bowls. He is speaking of hearts, of what people do with the light they've been given. Some people want to understand. They lean in, letting the light in. Others want to stay blind because light shows too much. Jesus keeps teaching, and the lake remains calm as if listening too. The disciples, now sitting on the shore, watch him closely. They've heard his teachings before, but today feels different, like each word carries more weight than the last. Nearby, a fisherman fidgets with a piece of rope, thinking of his life, his temper, his debts, his empty nets. A mother draws her child close, wondering if the light he speaks of could ever reach her home, her fears. An old man, cradling a walking stick, stares out at the water, eyes moist. He has waited his whole life for the Messiah. Could this truly be him? Jesus lets silence rest again before continuing. This time his tone shifts, not harsh, not soft, but inviting. "Imagine," he says, "a man scattering seed on the ground. Night and day, whether he sleeps or wakes, the seed sprouts and grows, though he does not know how." Heads lift. The crowd breathes again. He is speaking of seeds once more, but now about trust, about quiet faith. All by itself, the soil produces grain. First the stalk, then the head, then the full kernel in the head. And when the grain is ripe, he goes in with his sickle, for the harvest has come. It is a story of patience, of things growing unseen, of a kingdom not built with swords or politics, but with time, faith, and hidden roots. Before the crowd can linger on it too long, he offers another picture. "The kingdom of God is like a mustard seed," he says. "It is the smallest of all seeds on earth, yet when it is planted, it grows and becomes the largest of garden plants, with branches so wide the birds of the air can perch in its shade." A small boy in the front row glances at the mustard plant growing near the shore, scraggly, unimpressive. He tries to imagine it towering like a tree. A woman imagines her sorrow, small as a seed, could one day become shade for someone else. A fisherman wonders if his rough, stubborn heart could grow into something strong and sheltering. Jesus speaks no explanation this time. He leaves the stories hanging in the air like seeds waiting for soil. Some people understand, some don't. Some don't care. But no one can say they weren't given light. The breeze shifts. A flock of birds passes overhead. The day grows warmer. And still, the people don't leave. Jesus looks at them, faces sunlit and shadowed. He stands in the boat, and his eyes move over the multitude. He sees their hunger, their confusion, their yearning. On the horizon, dark clouds gather faintly over the distant hills, a quiet reminder that not every day stays calm. But for now, the teacher remains on the water, and the next words he speaks will draw them even deeper. The crowd remains along the shoreline, the sun climbing higher into the sky. Some stand with arms folded, some sit cross-legged on warm sand, others rest on boats pulled halfway onto the shore. Eyes stay fixed on Jesus. No one dares to interrupt. His voice, calm but carrying purpose, returns to the image of seeds. Not seeds thrown once, but seeds that live hidden beneath the surface, growing in silence. The kingdom of God, he says, is like a man who scatters seed on the ground. Night and day, whether he sleeps or wakes, the seed sprouts and grows, though he does not know how. A light breeze moves across the lake, bending reeds along the water's edge. People glance at the wheat fields beyond the hills, golden in the distance. They have all seen it, a farmer's hands rough with labor, soil broken and seed scattered. But after that, nothing but waiting. No shouting, no forcing. Just time, rain, and unseen work beneath the soil. All by itself, Jesus continues, the soil produces grain. First the stalk, then the head, then the full kernel in the head. And when the grain is ripe, he immediately puts in the sickle because the harvest has come. Some listeners sigh with quiet relief. They understand now. God's kingdom is not rushed. It doesn't need to be loud to be real. It grows in hearts the way seeds grow in the ground, quietly, invisibly, and with certainty. A young woman near the front, holding her feverish child, closes her eyes. She whispers a prayer, not loud, not elaborate, just a seed of trust. A man who has wrestled with doubts for years finds himself breathing easier. Even the skeptics feel something they cannot name. Jesus lifts his gaze over the multitude. His expression is gentle, yet it carries an urgency that cannot be ignored. He speaks again. What shall we say the kingdom of God is like? Or what parable shall we use to describe it? A few children lean forward eagerly. They love when he asks questions like that. It is like a mustard seed, he says. Several people smile. A mustard seed, tiny, nearly invisible when held between fingers. Farmers often brush them from their hands without noticing. It is the smallest of all seeds on earth, yet when planted, it grows into the largest of garden plants, with branches so wide that the birds of the air can perch in its shade. Some laugh softly, not in mockery, but in wonder, simple, humble. The kingdom does not begin like a throne, more like a seed buried in dirt. A mother thinks of her tired prayers whispered over her children at night. A fisherman thinks of his weak faith, often nearly broken but somehow still there. A man who hasn't felt hope since his wife died suddenly wonders if mustard seed faith could still live in him. Jesus lets the words settle over them like sunlight over water. No kingdom armies, no banners, no golden chariots. A seed, small, hidden, alive. He keeps teaching in parables, each one finding a new home in someone's soul. He does not try to convince with force. He does not argue with the Pharisees standing at the back. He simply plants truth. Some hearts take it in, others do not. But the seeds are thrown generously, as if he truly believes that some will grow, even in the most unlikely soil. Time passes. The sun rises higher. A few clouds drift overhead. Some of the crowd begin shifting their feet, but no one leaves. The disciples sit at the water's edge, listening, their sandals half buried in the sand. Jesus' voice softens again, but it still reaches every ear. With the measure you use, it will be measured to you and more. He speaks of hearing well, of being faithful with what is given, of light not hidden, of seeds not wasted. And then he pauses, not because he is finished, but because sometimes the silence is also part of the teaching. The people breathe, think, wrestle. Somewhere across the lake, a bird cries out. Waves gently touch the side of the boat. No one knows yet that storms are coming, both on the water and in their lives. For now, the teacher speaks of seeds, and something deep beneath the surface of many hearts has already begun to grow. The murmurs of the crowd soften as Jesus allows the last parable to rest in their minds. Some are still reflecting on the quiet growth of seeds in the soil. Others sit in silence, sensing there is more, something they haven't fully grasped yet. Jesus looks across the multitude. his gaze gentle but searching, as though he sees not only who they are, but who they could become. He speaks again, voice steady over the water. To what shall we compare the kingdom of God? What parable will help you understand it? People lean in once more. Even those who had started to drift into thought return their attention to him. They expect something grand, something about kings or armies or triumph. Instead, he says, it is like a mustard seed. A few blink in surprise. A mustard seed? That tiny, nearly invisible speck that catches in the folds of a farmer's clothes? That dust-like seed that birds often swallow by accident? Jesus continues, though it is the smallest of all the seeds you plant in the ground, it's planted, it grows and becomes the largest of garden plants. It puts out such wide branches that the birds of the air come and rest in its shade. For a moment, no one speaks. Then slowly it begins to make sense. A seed so small it can be lost in the palm of a hand, yet strong enough to become a shelter. A kingdom that begins not with noise, but with something nearly invisible, something humble, something like hope. An elderly man at the edge of the crowd smiles faintly. He has seen mustard shrubs in the fields, unexpectedly tall, branches stretching like open arms. He pictures birds resting there, safe from wind and sun. His heart stirs. A young girl watches a sparrow land on a branch nearby. She tugs at her mother's sleeve. Is that what he means? The mother only presses her hand, eyes wet. The disciples stand together, listening. They don't fully understand yet, but there is a quiet comfort in this image. A kingdom that does not force itself into existence, but grows from something small, almost overlooked. Some in the crowd, especially the religious leaders, are unsettled. This kingdom he speaks of is not built by power or rules or titles. It begins in the unseen, in the heart, in the places no one is looking. Jesus continues speaking, sharing parables of heaven woven into the language of ordinary life. Some hear only stories, others hear an invitation. The sun begins to lower, casting golden light across the water. Shadows stretch across the beach. The gentle wind carries the scent of salt and wild thyme from the shore. The day has been long, and yet no one seems ready to leave. Jesus rises from his seat in the boat. For a moment, he simply stands there, the teacher, the carpenter, the one they can't quite explain. He looks at the faces gathered, tired, curious, hopeful, burdened. The time for speaking to the crowd is ending. He tells his disciples to send them home. Slowly, people begin to rise. Some leave in silence, minds turning with questions. Others speak softly about seeds and kingdoms and light. A few linger, watching the small boat on the water, unsure why their hearts feel both heavy and light at once. The disciples move through the crowd, helping families gather their belongings, lifting the sick, guiding the elderly. When the last of the people begin to walk back toward the town paths, Jesus looks to his followers. Let us go to the other side of the lake. Simon Peter nods. The boats are readied. Nets are pushed aside. The water darkens as the sun dips behind the hills, painting the horizon with hints of orange and violet. Seabirds fly low over the surface, wings skimming the water. Jesus steps back into the boat. This time, he is quieter, weary perhaps from the long hours of teaching, or maybe simply thoughtful. The disciples push away from shore. The lake opens before them, vast, calm, reflecting the fading sky. They do not yet know what waits on the other side. They do not know about the storm forming beyond the hills, or the questions that will rise like waves in the night. For now, they only know this. The kingdom starts small, and it is already growing. The last shimmer of daylight fades beyond the hills as the boat glides over the quiet water. The crowd is now a distant memory. Small figures walking back to fishing villages, homes, and silent questions. Only the sound of gentle waves tapping against the boat remains. Jesus rests near the stern, his head on a cushion. His breathing is slow, peaceful. The disciples are at the oars. The air cools. Stars begin to appear one by one, scattered across the darkening sky. For a moment, everything seems calm. Then the wind shifts. It starts as a whisper through the reeds along the shore. Then it builds, sharp, sudden, and uninvited. The lake, so calm before, begins to tremble. Ripples become waves. Waves become walls of water. The disciples glance at one another. They've seen storms on this lake before, but something about this one feels different, like the darkness itself has teeth. A violent gust slams into the boat. Water sprays high and crashes into their faces. The vessel tilts dangerously to one side before groaning back into balance. The sail whips violently. Oars slip from wet hands. Andrew shouts over the rising wind, "Keep her steady!" But the water answers with another blow, cold, merciless, flooding the floorboards. Jesus still sleeps. The storm grows with terrifying speed. Waves rise high enough to block out the moonlight. Thunder growls in the distance. Lightning splits the sky, revealing the terror on the disciples' faces. Peter grips the side of the boat, his knuckles white. James and John, fishermen since boyhood, fight the ropes with trembling hands. The small boat heaves. Water sloshes around their ankles, then their shins. Every wave crashes harder than the last, as though the lake itself intends to swallow them whole. Still, Jesus sleeps. Fear turns into desperation. Matthew, once a tax collector and no sailor, clings to the mast, soaked and shaking. His voice breaks. "We're going to die." Peter stares at Jesus through the rain and foam. How can he sleep now, when death is inches away? Driven by panic, they rush to him. Peter's voice cracks as he cries out, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" For the first time, Jesus stirs. He sits up slowly, as if waking from a peaceful dream utterly untouched by the storm. His eyes open, not startled, not afraid. He rises to his feet, water pooling around his ankles, wind tugging at his cloak. The boat pitches, yet he stands unmoved. He looks, not at the disciples, but at the storm. With a voice that carries more power than thunder, he speaks 3 simple words. "Quiet, be still." It is not a plea. It is a command, and immediately, like a wild animal suddenly tamed, the wind stops. The waves sink. The water smooths out, settling like glass beneath a moonlit sky. The only sound left is the dripping of water from soaked robes and oars. The storm is gone. The silence that follows is heavier than the storm itself. Jesus turns to his disciples, his gaze not angry but piercing. "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" No one answers. Their clothes cling to their skin, their hair drips, their hearts pound. But it isn't the storm they fear now. It's him. They whisper to one another, voices barely audible over the gentle lap of water against the boat. Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. The question hangs over them like mist. The boat continues across the now peaceful lake. The stars shine brighter, unobstructed by clouds. Jesus sits back down, his expression unreadable, as the disciples row in silence, every creak of wood and dip of oar echoing louder in their thoughts. Somewhere in the darkness ahead lies the other shore. None of them know what waits there. A quiet fishing town, another crowd, or something stranger? But one truth has taken root in each of them, like a seed forced deep by the storm. They are not simply following a teacher. They are in the boat with someone who commands creation. And the question, "Who is this?" will not leave them. The night air is cold, the kind that settles deep into the skin. The storm has passed, but the memory of it still clings to the disciples like seawater in their clothes. The surface of the lake lies calm again, dark and glassy beneath the moon. Every breath of wind feels gentler now, almost unreal after the roaring chaos that nearly swallowed them. Jesus has gone alone to the mountainside to pray. He left them with simple instructions. Go on ahead to the other side. They obeyed, but their hearts are still shaking from witnessing wind and waves bow to his voice. Hours pass. The stars stretch across the skies. The boat creaks across the moonlit water. Some try to sleep, others sit in silence. No one speaks of what happened. Some are still afraid, not of the storm that was, but of the man who stilled it. Then, something moves on the water. At first it seems like mist growing thicker, but mist doesn't move with purpose. Mist doesn't walk. Someone gasps. Another cries out, voice cracking, "It's a ghost!" Figures shift. Backward in panic. Hearts slam against ribs. Fear rises like a new wave. But then, his voice. "Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid." Relief washes over them, but not completely. Because what they are seeing is impossible. Jesus is walking on the sea as if it were stone beneath his feet. No one moves, except Peter. Hands trembling, he leans over the edge of the boat, eyes fixed on Jesus. "Lord, If it's really you, tell me to come to you on the water." A moment of silence, only the soft lapping of waves. Then Jesus speaks a single word: "Come." The other disciples stare at Peter like he's lost his mind, but something in his chest burns, something louder than fear, stronger than logic. He swings one leg over the edge, his foot meets water, but it doesn't sink. He hesitates. Then the other foot follows. The lake holds him. Wind brushes his face. The world narrows to one thing: Jesus standing on the waves, calm as dawn. Step, step, step. Every move is both terror and wonder. The water is firm but alive beneath him, like walking across the back of a breathing giant. His eyes stay locked on Jesus, heart pounding louder than the waves ever did. But then he notices the wind again, the ripples, the deep black beneath his feet. What am I doing? This is impossible. I'm not supposed to be here. Fear rushes back in. The water beneath him softens. He begins to sink. "Lord, save me!" The cry rips from his throat, raw and desperate. Immediately, Jesus reaches out. His hand grips Peter's wrist, firm, unshakable. The water stops swallowing him. Jesus pulls him up. They stand together on the waves. Jesus' voice is soft, not angry, not harsh, just honest. "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" Peter can't answer. Rainwater and tears sting his eyes, but Jesus doesn't let go. Together, they walk back to the boat. When they climb in, the wind dies completely. The others stare in silence. Some whisper, some weep. Then one voice, maybe John's, maybe Thomas's, maybe all of them at once, breathes, "Truly, you are the Son of God." They bow their heads, not because they are told to, but because awe pushes them to their knees. Faith, they learn, is not never sinking. Faith is reaching for his hand when you do. The boat drifts over calmer waters. The moon is high. Hearts are quiet. Some stare at Peter, still soaked, still shaking, but different. He stepped out. He sank. And Jesus still caught him. Ahead, the distant shoreline grows closer, but inside each of them, something deeper has begun, an uncomfortable, beautiful truth. You learn to walk on water not by never doubting, but by choosing Jesus when the waves rise. And sometimes the sinking moments become the very places faith learns to breathe. Dawn slowly breaks over the Sea of Galilee as the boat reaches the shore. Mist curls above the water, and soft hues of pink and gold spill across the sky. The disciples are silent, each one carrying the weight of what happened on the water, the storm, the calm, Peter's trembling steps, and the hand that saved him. Jesus steps onto the sand first. His feet leave clear prints along the shoreline. The others follow. But peace does not last long. Word spreads faster than they can take 10 steps inland. He's back. Jesus has returned. From every direction, narrow streets, stone houses, marketplace stalls, people rush to the shore. The sick are carried on mats. The blind are led by trembling hands. Mothers clutch their infants. Old men lean on staffs, breathless not from the walk, but from hope. By the time Jesus reaches the town's edge, the crowd is thickened around him like a tide. The disciples form a loose circle, trying to keep space open, but the people press in from every side. Then one man breaks through. He falls to his knees in the dust before Jesus. His robe is fine linen. He is not a fisherman or a farmer. It's Jairus, a synagogue leader. His hands shake. His voice is broken. "My little daughter." He can barely speak the words. "She's dying. Please, come. Lay your hands on her that she may be healed, that she may live." The crowd quiets. This is no ordinary request. This is a father begging. Jesus doesn't hesitate. He reaches down, gently helps Jairus to his feet, and begins walking. The crowd flows with them like a river. Fast, urgent, uncontainable. Dust rises. Sandal feet shuffle. People are bumping into one another, pressing so tightly that it's hard to breathe. Jesus moves forward, steady, calm, even as desperation swirls around him. Jairus glances back every few steps, as if the road itself is too slow. His daughter's life hangs by threads unseen. But in the chaos, another story quietly unfolds. A woman moves within the crowd, unseen, unnoticed. She keeps her head low. Her face is partly covered. For 12 years she has bled, 12 long years of doctors, remedies, whisperings behind her back, and money spent until she had nothing left. Worse than the illness itself is the isolation, considered unclean, untouchable, unwelcomed. She has heard stories, a man who heals, a touch that restores, and though she should not be here, she is. Her heart pounds as she is pushed and jostled, but she keeps moving closer. If I can just touch his cloak, just the edge, that is all she dares to hope for. Jesus continues walking beside Jairus, surrounded by the multitude. The air is thick with voices and dust and urgency. The woman reaches out. Her fingers brush the hem of his robe. In an instant, she knows. The bleeding stops. The pain quiets. Her body, exhausted for years, suddenly feels whole. Tears blur her vision. She tries to slip back into the crowd unseen. But Jesus stops. He turns. "Who touched me?" The disciples stare at him in disbelief. "Master," Peter says, glancing at the crowd pressing in from every side, "everyone is touching you. How can you ask that?" Jesus does not move. "Someone touched me. I felt power go out from me." Silence spreads outward like a wave. The woman knows she can't hide anymore. Trembling, she steps forward and falls to her knees. Words spill from her, what she did, what she suffered, what happened the moment she touched his robe. The crowd watches, stunned. Jesus kneels slightly, meeting her eyes. There is no anger in his face. "Daughter," he says softly, "your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." The word daughter falls like healing itself. She is no longer the unclean woman. She is seen, loved, restored. Hope flickers in the crowd like light, but just then, another voice breaks through. Jairus turns. His servant stands behind him, face pale, eyes heavy. "Your daughter is gone." The words fall like stones. "You don't need to bother the teacher anymore." Jairus' shoulders collapse. His eyes close. The world narrows. But Jesus speaks before grief can swallow him. "Don't be afraid. Just believe." And he keeps walking. The air feels heavy, thick with dust, sweat, and the tension of interrupted hope. Jairus stands frozen, the words still echoing in his mind like a tolling bell. "Your daughter is gone." His lips part, but no sound comes. His hands fall to his sides. He doesn't look at Jesus. He can't. But Jesus does not step back or speak condolences. He looks at Jairus with the same calm that stilled the sea. His words are gentle, but they cut through despair like light breaking into a dark room. "Do not be afraid, only believe." It makes no sense, and yet something in Jairus' chest stirs. A flicker, a breath. He nods slowly, though his eyes are wet. The crowd doesn't understand. Whispers ripple among them. "Did you hear? The girl has died." Why does he keep walking? What more can he do now? But Jesus keeps moving toward Jairus' home, and Jairus walks beside him, weak, trembling, but still walking. The disciples follow closely. Peter, James, and John. The rest remain with the crowd. The road is quieter now. No one pushes forward. No one runs. The excitement that once surrounded Jesus is now subdued, replaced by uncertainty. There are no more miracles expected here, just mourning. As they approach the house, the sound reaches them first, wailing. Loud, sharp cries from hired mourners and grieving relatives. Flutes play funeral notes. Women tear their garments. People beat their chests. The house is filled with chaos and sorrow. Jairus flinches at the sound. Jesus steps into the courtyard and raises his voice above the noise. "Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep." The mourners stop. Silence hangs for a heartbeat. Then laughter, not joyful, bitter. They mock him. But Jesus does not respond to their disbelief. He simply tells them to leave. His tone is not harsh, just firm, like a door closing. They step back, offended, but the authority in his voice leaves no room for argument. The noise fades as the mourners shuffle outside, muttering. Inside the house, quiet settles. Jesus enters the room where the child lies. Jairus and his wife follow closely, hearts pounding. The girl, only 12 years old, lies still on the bed. Her skin pale, her chest unmoving, her small hands folded by someone who had already given up. Peter, James, and John stand silently at the door. Jesus walks to the child's side. He kneels. He reaches out and takes her hand, soft, lifeless, still. No dramatic gesture, no loud prayer, just a whisper. "Talitha cum." "Little girl, I say to you, arise." The room holds its breath. Then, A flutter of breath, a small gasp as if sleep is giving way to morning. Her fingers twitch in his hand. Her eyes open. She blinks, confused at first, then calm. She looks at her mother, then her father. Jairus gasps, a sound caught between laughter and sobbing. His wife covers her mouth, falling to her knees. Tears spill freely. Jesus smiles softly and helps the girl sit up. "Give her something to eat," he says gently, as if this is the simplest thing in the world. Life, ordinary, beautiful life, returns to the room. The disciples stare in awe. They had seen storms stilled, demons flee, seeds fall into soil. But this is life returning where death once reigned. Jesus rises, still holding the little girl's hand for a moment. Then he lets go and speaks to the parents quietly. "Tell no one what has happened here." But their hearts are already shouting louder than words. Outside, the mourners fall silent as the girl steps into the doorway, holding her mother's hand. The whispers return, not of doubt this time, but of wonder, fear, and hope. Jesus steps away from the house, leaving behind a place once filled with sorrow, now filled with life. Peter walks beside him, still speechless. John wipes his eyes. James keeps glancing back as if to confirm it really happened. Behind them, Jairus holds his daughter close. Faith, they have learned, is not about never being afraid. It is choosing to walk with him, even when death has already entered the room. And sometimes the hand you reach for in the storm is the same hand that lifts the dead back to life. News spreads faster than the morning light over Galilee. By the time Jesus and his disciples step beyond Jairus' courtyard, whispers are already running through the streets like sparks on dry grass. The girl lives. Death listened to him. Even the mourners were wrong. People gather in corners, speaking in hushed disbelief. Some say it can't be true. Others swear by what they saw. The lifeless child stepping into the doorway, eyes open, cheeks flushed with life. Some drop to their knees. Others run to tell neighbors. A few, frightened by what this could mean, stay silent and slip away into shadow. Jesus does not stay to absorb praise or answer questions. He walks quietly through narrow streets, the disciples following, still shaken. The air smells of bread baking in clay ovens, of smoke from early morning fires, of life as usual. Yet everything feels different. Behind them, Jairus holds his daughter's hand as though she might disappear again. His wife presses her forehead to the girl's hair, whispering thanks to God over and over. The house, once filled with wailing, now overflows with stunned laughter and tears of joy. By noon, the streets are filled again, not with mourning this time, but with crowds searching for the teacher. They bring sons who cannot walk, daughters who cannot see, friends tormented in mind or body. Hope drives their steps. The shoreline where Jesus once taught from the boat now swells with people so tightly packed it's difficult to move. Jesus heals quietly. No stage, no performance, only a touch, a word, a glance. A child's twisted foot straightens in front of stunned parents. A man blind from birth blinks hard as the world floods his eyes with color. A woman with trembling hands suddenly lifts them steady toward the sky. Yet the more people he heals, the more come. By evening, Jesus looks at the crowd, not with weariness, but with compassion so deep it softens his features. "They are like sheep without a shepherd," he says quietly to the disciples. He leads them to a hillside just outside town. The sun hangs low, casting golden light over swaying grasses. Birds call to each other from the fig trees nearby. The crowd settles on the ground, waiting. But Jesus doesn't begin with healing this time. He looks at his 12 disciples, men who have seen storms stilled, demons silenced, and even death reversed, and gives them a command they never expected. "Go." They stare at him. He explains, not with parables this time, but with instruction. "Go to the towns of Israel, preach that the kingdom of heaven has come near, heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, drive out demons." Andrew's brows knit. "But Rabbi, we're fishermen, not teachers." Jesus meets his gaze. "You have received freely, now give freely." He tells them to take no bag, no silver, no extra tunic, only a staff, sandals, and faith. Depend not on their skill, but on God's provision and the hospitality of those who welcome the message. Peter glances at the others, uncertain. Thomas shifts uncomfortably. Matthew presses his lips together. counting the risk, the miles, the unanswered questions. But Jesus' voice is steady. If a home welcomes you, let your peace rest on it. If not, shake the dust from your feet and move on. I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves. Be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. The disciples exchange uneasy looks. This is no longer just listening, no longer just watching. This is stepping out, like Peter on the water. Not because they feel ready, but because he said, "Come." Jesus places his hands on each of them, one by one. Not hurried, not distant, as though he knows every fear behind their eyes, as though he loves them anyway. Their hearts pound, not with doubt this time, but with something that sounds like courage. The crowd watches as pairs begin to form, Peter with Andrew, James with John, Matthew with Thomas. They begin walking down the hill toward the road, dust rising behind their sandals. Some carry only a staff, some carry trembling hearts, but all carry his words. Jesus remains on the hilltop, watching them go. The wind stirs his robe. Below him, the Sea of Galilee shimmers with afternoon light. And though they do not know it yet, this is the beginning of something that will reach far beyond this day, this country, this shoreline. Because faith was never meant to stay in boats or houses where miracles happened. It was meant to walk. The sun hangs high over the hills as the 12 begin to descend the path, their figures growing smaller with each step. Dust rises beneath their sandals, carried by the wind like faded echoes of everything they have just witnessed. Storms calmed, demons silenced, a girl raised from death. Behind them, Jesus remains on the ridge for a moment, watching quietly. There is no grand farewell, no ceremonial blessing. Only simple obedience and the weight of his word still lingering in their hearts. They walk in pairs. Peter and Andrew lead with confident strides, though neither speaks. James and John follow, quieter than usual, their fiery tempers softened into contemplation. Matthew walks beside Thomas. One once counted coins, the other counts doubts, but both now count only on him. "Do you think we're ready?" Thomas finally asks. Matthew doesn't answer quickly. He adjusts the strap of his sandal, then says, "We weren't ready when he called us. We followed him anyway." They keep walking. Back at the hilltop, Jesus turns toward the villages scattered across Galilee. He does not rest. He walks. Every step is steady, unhurried. The crowds find him again, carrying sickness, questions, and a hunger deeper than physical need. In town after town, synagogues open their doors. Some welcome him with awe, others with suspicion. But he teaches all who will listen. His voice echoes against stone walls, speaking of seeds, fields ready for harvest, lamps meant to shine. Meanwhile, the disciples reach the first village. They pause at the entrance, a stone archway, a well at its center, goats bleating in the distance. Peter glances at Andrew. He said no bag, no money, just walk in. Andrew nods but swallows hard. A woman drawing water from the well notices them. Their clothes are dusty, faces sun-worn, but their eyes are clear. Something about them feels different, like fishermen who stepped into another life. "Peace to this house," Peter says to the first family who opens their door. The man inside studies them, then gestures. "Come, eat with us." Faith becomes bread shared at a stranger's table. In another home, James and John step inside where a child lies feverish. The mother watches skeptically as they kneel beside the bed. James whispers a prayer, awkwardly at first, then stronger. The child opens his eyes. His mother drops to the floor, tears streaming. By nightfall, whispers spread again through the village. They come in his name. They speak of the kingdom, and the sick rise. But not everywhere welcomes them. Thomas and Matthew are turned away from a marketplace when merchants recognize Matthew as a former tax collector. "We don't want trouble here," one man says, barring the door. They step back into the street as the door shuts. "Should we try another house?" Thomas asks. Matthew brushes dust from his feet just as Jesus taught. Another house. And so they walk on. Not in defeat, but in obedience. Far from them, Jesus heals a man in a synagogue whose hand is shriveled. Pharisees watch closely. They whisper to each other, not words of worship, but of plans. In a crowded street, Jesus pauses as a group of children run to him. They cling to his robe, laughing. His face softens into a smile. Some adults try to pull the children away, whispering that he has no time for them. Jesus simply says, "Let them come." His voice has the same authority that calmed storms, yet the same gentleness that lifted Jairus' daughter from death. Meanwhile, the disciples continue to travel, learning to preach not with polished words, but with stories he told. They speak of mustard seeds and hidden treasure, of forgiveness, of lamps on stands, of a kingdom not of swords, but of hearts. They lay hands on the sick, not because they feel powerful, but because he said they could. And still, people are healed. In the quiet of night, campfires burn small across the hills. The disciples sit in pairs under the stars, sharing small pieces of bread and stories of the day. Some laugh, some sit in silence, overwhelmed, some confess their fear. But all agree on one thing. This is no longer just following. This is becoming. And somewhere, miles away in another village, Jesus lifts his eyes from a crowd and whispers a prayer for them all. Though scattered across towns and roads, they are not alone. His voice, his presence, his call still leads them, like a lamp set high in the dark. The disciples return one by one from the towns they were sent to, dust on their sandals, joy and weariness in their eyes. Some carry stories of miracles, others carry stories of doors slammed and heads turned away. Yet they all return changed. They gather again by the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus waits for them. His smile is quiet but warm, like someone watching seeds take root. They sit beneath the shade of olive trees, sharing flatbread and figs. Voices overlap with stories of healing, of broken people restored, of nights spent under stars with nothing but faith for shelter. But Jesus rises before the meal ends. "Come," he says. "We are going home." The word home makes some of them pause. Nazareth, the town where he grew up, the workshop where he shaped wood with his hands, the streets where people still remember him as Mary's son, Joseph's apprentice, the place where they know his brothers, his sisters. Familiar, but not necessarily welcoming. They follow him through rolling hills dotted with wildflowers, past vineyards and fig trees ripening in the sun. The air smells of thyme and dust and distant fires from cooking hearths. As they approach Nazareth, rooftops appear first, low stone houses surrounded by fields and pastures. Children chasing sheep pause at the sight of Jesus. Some smile, recognizing him. Others stare, unsure. An older woman at the well squints, then whispers to a neighbor. Word spreads quickly. By the time he reaches the town center, people are already gathering, faces full of curiosity, skepticism, or both. On the Sabbath, he enters the small stone synagogue where he once sat as a boy. The elders nod politely but cautiously. The scroll of Isaiah is handed to him. He stands. Silence settles like dust. He reads, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me." His voice is calm, steady. He rolls up the scroll, returns it to the attendant, and sits. Every eye is on him. He speaks again, softly, but with unshakable certainty. "Today, this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing." For a moment, admiration stirs. Then the questions begin. Isn't this the carpenter? We know his mother, Mary. His brothers are James, Joseph, Simon, Judas. Aren't his sisters here with us? Who does he think he is? The tone shifts from curiosity to offense. Familiarity hardens into disbelief. They don't deny his wisdom. They simply refuse to accept that it could come from him. Jesus' gaze moves over their faces, neighbors, old family friends, men who once bought his tables and plows. He does not look surprised, only grieved. A prophet, he says quietly, is honored everywhere except in his hometown, among his relatives, and in his own house. Some cross their arms, others look away. He lays his hands on a few sick who come quietly, and they are healed. But not many. Not because he lacks power, he is the one who calmed storms and raised the dead, but because their hearts are shut like locked doors. Unbelief has a sound. It is not always shouting. Sometimes it is the quiet refusal to see what stands in front of you. The disciples watch in disbelief. They have seen crowds swell with faith, people traveling miles just to touch his cloak. But here, in the place that knows his name best, his words fall like rain on stone. He leaves the synagogue. The air outside is warm, but the tension lingers like a shadow. They walk the narrow streets of Nazareth one last time. No crowds follow. No cries for healing. Just silence, broken by whispered doubts and closed windows. Beyond the town, fields stretch open under the sky. Jesus keeps walking. The disciples follow, glancing back at the village slowly shrinking behind them. No one speaks for a long time. Finally, Andrew exhales. "How can strangers believe him?" he says quietly. And his own people turn away. Jesus does not stop walking. His eyes are fixed ahead, toward villages that have not yet heard, toward hearts not yet hardened. His voice is calm. Faith is not born from familiarity. They continue down the dusty road, Nazareth disappearing behind the hills. Ahead lies more teaching, more walking, more people waiting, the kind with open hands and open hearts. Beyond the hills of Nazareth, dust rises on the road like smoke. The disciples walk silently beside Jesus, the sting of rejection still clinging to them like sand after a storm. His hometown did not see him, not truly, but the road continues, and so do they. Days pass. Their journey curves along the shores of Galilee once more. The lake lies calm under the sun, blue, wide, familiar. It's here that the 12 begin to return from the towns they were sent to. One after another, they appear on the horizon, tired, sunburned, clothes worn thin, but faces alight with something deeper than fatigue. Peter is the first. He carries no bags, no silver, only stories. "We spoke," he says breathless, "and they listened. We prayed, and demons fled." Andrew follows, smiling quietly. James and John arrive next, shoulders aching but eyes bright. Thomas, weary, admits with a crooked smile, "I doubted I could do it, but he did it through me anyway." Matthew carries nothing but a walking staff now, no coins, no ledger. His voice is soft. "We went with empty hands, and still nothing lacked." They gather under the shade of a lone fig tree by the water. The sun glints on the lake, the waves soft and gentle. Jesus listens to every story, every healing, every door closed, every frightened prayer whispered in the dark. He says little, but his eyes speak rest and pride. But he sees their shoulders drooping, their hands trembling slightly from exhaustion. "You have done well," he tells them. "Now, come away by yourselves to a quiet place and rest." Rest. The word feels like cool water. They step into a boat, leaving behind the shoreline. The wind is soft. The water carries them quietly away, as if cradling them towards solitude and sleep. Some rest their heads against the wooden sides, eyes drifting closed. Others simply sit in silence, letting peace settle in their bones. But quiet is short-lived. People on the shore notice the boat. Someone shouts, pointing toward it. Then another. Word spreads like fire through dry grass. "He's heading toward Bethsaida." Before the boat is even crossed halfway, people begin running along the shoreline. Men, women, the sick carried on mats, mothers carrying children, they all run. More join as they pass through villages. From every direction, feet pound the earth in urgency. By the time the boat touches land, thousands are already waiting. The disciples stare, stunned. What was supposed to be solitude has turned into a sea of faces, hopeful, desperate, persistent. Some of the disciples sigh in frustration. They are bone-tired, hungry. They expected a quiet hillside, not another crowd. Peter wipes his forehead. Andrew mutters under his breath. Even John, patient as he is, frowns slightly. But Jesus steps onto the shore. He looks at the multitude spread across the green grass, the sick laying on blankets, the poor standing barefoot, shepherd boys, fishermen, widows, children clutching bread. His heart breaks for them. They are like sheep without a shepherd. There is no irritation in his voice, only compassion. He turns to the disciples, not with rebuke, but with purpose. Let's teach them. So once more, they follow him. On the hillside, he speaks as he did from the boat, stories, truth, comfort. Hours pass. The sun begins to descend. Shadows stretch. The disciples whisper among themselves. This is a remote place. It's late. They need to eat. At last, they approach Jesus. Send them away so they can find food in the villages. Jesus looks at them, these men who have healed the sick, cast out demons, walked miles with nothing but trust. You give them something to eat. Their jaws tighten. Philip does the math. 8 months' wages wouldn't feed this many. Jesus asks, "What do you have?" Andrew hesitates. "There's a boy here. He has 5 small loaves and 2 fish. But what is that for thousands?" Jesus smiles. "Bring them to me." He has them sit the people down, groups of 50, of 100, scattered across the green grass. The disciples move among them, still unsure, still tired. Yet they obey. Jesus takes the bread. He looks up to heaven. He gives thanks. He breaks it. He hands it to them. They carry it from one group to the next, bread in their hands, fish multiplied beyond logic. The more they give, the more there is. People eat and eat and eat until no one is hungry. 12 baskets overflow with what remains, and as the sun dips beyond the hills, the disciples realize rest didn't mean escape. Sometimes rest means being held by the one who feeds thousands from empty hands. The sun drifts lower in the sky, painting the hills in gold as the crowd settles on the grassy slopes. Thousands of people, families, fishermen, shepherds, widows, the sick, gathered because they could not bear to leave the one who spoke life into their tired hearts. Jesus continues teaching, his voice calm yet full of quiet power. The disciples sit nearby, but their eyes shift uneasily toward the horizon. Shadows are growing longer. Stomachs are starting to growl. And there is no village nearby, no market, no bread. Philip is the first to speak. Lord, this place is remote, and it's already late. Send the people away so they can buy food in the surrounding villages. Jesus looks at the crowd, thousands, tired from the journey, yet drawn like moths to his light. You give them something to eat. A stunned silence follows. Peter blinks. Andrew glances at Judas, who clutches the small money bag. Philip does the math in his head. 8 months' wages wouldn't be enough for each one to have even a bite, Philip says. Jesus says nothing. He only waits. Andrew clears his throat and steps forward. There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish, but what is that among so many? Jesus smiles, not at the size of the offering, but at the faith it took to bring it forward. Have the people sit down, he says. The disciples move among the masses, directing them to sit in groups, 50s, 100s, scattered across the hill like patches of wildflowers. The grass is soft and green beneath them. The breeze carries the scent of the lake and crushed thyme underfoot. The murmuring crowd watches, curious. Jesus takes the 5 loaves and 2 fish and holds them in his hands. He looks up to heaven. Father, thank you. He breaks the bread. He hands pieces to the disciples. They hesitate for a heartbeat, then begin handing them out. One group, then the next. 10 people, 50, 100. Bread keeps appearing in their hands. Fish keeps multiplying. It does not run out. The disciples move faster, no longer doubting, only delivering. Their baskets, once nearly empty, never grow light. Bread breaks in their fingers like warm sunrise. Fish passes from hand to hand. They look at one another with disbelief and joy tangled together. Children eat first, laughing as they chew thick pieces of bread. Old men with tired eyes take small bites, then larger ones. Women break food into pieces for babies resting on their laps. The sick, lying on woven mats, lift bread to their lips with trembling hands. Everyone eats, not a bite each. They eat until they are full, until hunger is nothing but a memory. At last, Jesus says, "Gather the leftovers, let nothing be wasted." The disciples walk across the hillside, picking up pieces of bread and fish that remain. Each carries a basket. One basket fills, then another, 12 in total, full to the brim. They stare at the overflowing baskets, stunned. There were 5 loaves. Now there are 12 baskets. The crowd falls quiet, not with hunger, but with astonishment. Whispers rise like wind through the grass. He fed us, with nothing but his hands. Could he be the one we've waited for? Someone shouts, "Make him king." Others echo it. Hope shifts into excitement. People begin to stand, hearts pounding with the thought of a king who feeds, heals, calms storms. A king who could drive out Rome. But Jesus' expression changes, calm yet firm. Not anger, not fear, but refusal. He turns to the disciples quietly. Go to the boat, cross to the other side of the lake. They hesitate. The crowd is swelling with passion and plans, but Jesus' eyes are clear. Go. So they obey. They move through the crowd as people press forward, some calling for Jesus to lead them, some reaching for his hands. Jesus quietly steps away from them all, not toward a throne, but toward solitude. He walks up the hillside alone as the sky deepens into hues of purple and orange. The wind cools. The voices of the crowd fade behind him. Higher and higher he walks until only silence and sky surround him. There, on the mountain, he kneels, not before a crown, but before his Father. Below, on the lake, the disciples push the boat from shore. The first stars appear overhead. The water is dark and still. For now, night settles over the Sea of Galilee, quiet at first. The disciples row under a darkening sky, the air cool against their skin. The shoreline fades into shadow behind them. Ahead, only water and night. Jesus is not with them. He has gone up the mountain alone to pray. The lake lies still for a time. Then the wind changes. It begins as a low moan across the surface, subtle, like a warning. The water trembles. Ripples become waves. Waves become something stronger, darker. The disciples lean into the oars. The wind pushes back. The boat rocks hard, spray slapping into their faces. The sail snaps against the mast. The sky grows heavy with thick clouds swallowing moonlight. Somewhere in the darkness, thunder mutters. Hours pass. Their hands blister against the wood. Muscles burn. Hearts beat fast, not from effort alone, but from fear. They are fishing men. They know this sea, and they know when it turns against them. Still, Jesus is not here. Peter wipes rain from his face. Why hasn't he come yet? His voice is lost in the howling wind. Andrew grits his teeth and rows harder. James mutters a prayer. John stares into the blackness over the waves, searching for something, anything. The storm grows, their strength fades, and then something moves on the water. At first it looks like mist shaped into a man, then like moonlight on foam. It walks, no, glides, across the waves. Closer, closer. Someone gasps. What is that? Another cries out. A ghost! Panic erupts. Hearts lurch. Hands freeze on the oars. But then, over wind and water, a voice. Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid. The voice they know better than their own breath. Jesus, walking on the water, not sinking, not struggling. Walking as if the sea itself holds him up. The disciples stare, half terrified, half in awe. Peter stands. The wind lashes his cloak, the boat rocking beneath his feet. Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you on the water. Jesus doesn't hesitate. Come. For a heartbeat, no one moves. Then Peter climbs over the side of the boat. His sandals touch the water. It holds. He takes a step, then another. The waves rise and fall beneath him like the chest of a sleeping giant, but he does not sink. His eyes are locked on Jesus. The wind tears at his hair. The storm bends around him. Step, step. But then, Peter looks away. He sees the height of the waves, feels the wind scream against his skin. Hears his own heartbeat louder than faith, and fear rushes in. The water softens beneath him. He starts to sink. Lord, save me! The cry splits the storm. Immediately, Jesus grasps his hand. Not gently, not cautiously, but firmly, as though he's been waiting for that reach. Water drips from Peter's hair, his clothes heavy and cold. His breath comes in gasps. Jesus holds him up. You of little faith, Jesus says quietly, not in anger but in sorrow. Why did you doubt? They walk back to the boat together. As soon as they climb in, the wind stops. The sea lays flat, still, silent. The disciples can only stare. Some collapse to their knees, others cover their faces. No one speaks, until finally someone whispers what all of them now know. Truly, you are the Son of God. Their voices join in worship, not loud, but in reverent awe. The storm that terrified them is now only a memory washed beneath the stars. The boat glides gently across calm waters once more. Somewhere to the east, dawn is beginning to brush the horizon. A thin line of pale gold appears. The world is quiet again. Jesus sits at the bow, the wind tugging softly at his robe. Peter sits near him, drenched, silent, humbled, but alive. Ahead, the shoreline comes into view. Villages just waking, fishermen preparing their nets, fires being lit for morning bread. And already people are gathering, carrying sickness, hunger, and hope toward the place where the boat will land. The boat touches the shore at Gennesaret just as dawn fully breaks. Villagers are already gathering along the water, recognizing Jesus as soon as he steps onto land. Some run ahead into towns and fields, shouting his arrival. Others bring the sick on mats, laying them wherever he might pass, just hoping for a touch of his cloak. Wherever he walks, dusty roads, marketplaces, synagogues, hearts lift with hope. And yet, whispers also begin to spread across Galilee. He feeds thousands. He walks on water. Could this be the Messiah? The rumors find their way into Capernaum, where religious leaders listen with folded arms and narrowed eyes. Soon after, Jesus enters the synagogue in Capernaum. The stone walls are cool, the air filled with murmurs. Men sit shoulder to shoulder on worn benches, tassels of their prayer shawls brushing the floor. Women and children stand near the back. The 12 are there too, still quiet from the storm and the miracle that followed. Jesus begins to teach. "I am the bread of life," he says. His voice is calm, not loud, yet every ear hears. "Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never thirst." A ripple of confusion passes through the room. Some nod, remembering the loaves on the hillside. Others frown. He continues, "Your ancestors ate manna in the wilderness, and they died. But here is the bread that comes down from heaven, which anyone may eat and not die." More murmurs. A Pharisee leans forward, brows to knit. "I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats this bread will live forever." Then, words that strike harder than a storm wind. "And the bread I will give is my flesh." Silence. Then, outrage. "How can this man give us his flesh to eat? This is madness. Who does he think he is?" Jesus does not soften his words. "Unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you." Gasps, shock. Some pull their cloaks tighter, as though the words themselves make them unclean. He goes on, unwavering. "My flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. Whoever feeds on me will live because of me." It is too much for many. They came for bread, for miracles, for healing. Yes, but this sounds like surrender, dependence, trust beyond explanation. A man in the crowd whispers to his friend, "This teaching is too hard. Who can accept it?" Another shakes his head. "We wanted a king, not this." Jesus looks around the room and sees the shifting hearts, some hungry still, others closing like doors at night. "Does this offend you?" he asks. No one answers. He does not chase after their approval. He simply lays truth like seed on the soil and waits to see who lets it grow. One by one, people stand. Some leave quietly, shaking their heads. Others leave angrily, muttering, "Blasphemy, nonsense." Feet shuffle against the stone floor. Sandals slap against the ground outside. Even some who had followed him for months, disciples, not just bystanders, turn their backs and walk away. The synagogue grows quiet again. Jesus turns to the 12. They are still there, dusty, tired, uncertain. His voice is soft. "Do you want to leave too?" The question hangs in the air. Peter looks at the others, James, John, Andrew, and then back at Jesus. His voice is low but steady. "Lord, where else would we go?" He steps forward. "You have the words of eternal life. We believe and we know you are the Holy One of God." Jesus' eyes rest on them, not with relief but with something deeper, love, sorrow, resolve. He knows, not all of them truly stand with him. One heart among them is already turning cold, quietly planning, but for now, they stay. The synagogue empties. The sun outside climbs higher. Jesus leaves the stone threshold and steps back into the dusty streets of Capernaum, not with crowds behind him, but with a few men who refuse to walk away. The road ahead is narrowing. The miracles remain, but so does the cost. Yet still, they follow. Not because they understand everything he says, but because in a world full of bread that never satisfies, only he offers life that never ends. The synagogue in Capernaum slowly empties, leaving behind only dust, echoes, and a tension that lingers in the air. Many have walked away from Jesus after his teaching on the bread of life. The crowd has thinned, not because his miracles ceased, but because his words cut deeper than they expected. Still, Jesus continues his journey through Galilee, followed by those who remain. One morning, as he and the disciples gather to eat, a group approaches, Pharisees and scribes from Jerusalem. Their robes are immaculate, their expressions sharpened like blades. They have heard the stories of bread multiplied, storms calmed, even whispers of the dead raised to life. Yet they do not come to worship. They come to watch, to judge, to find fault. They stand at a distance, eyes fixed on Jesus and his disciples as they sit down to eat bread without going through the ceremonial hand-washing rituals. It doesn't take long. One Pharisee steps forward. "Why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders? They eat with unwashed hands." To them it is a serious accusation. Ritual purity is everything. Tradition, ceremony, appearance, they define righteousness by it. Jesus looks at them, not surprised. "Why do you break the command of God for the sake of your tradition?" His words are not loud, but they land like stones in still water. You nullify the word of God by your rules you pass down. They recoil. But he is not finished. "Well did Isaiah prophesy about you," Jesus says quietly. "These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules." A hush falls. Some in the crowd glance nervously at the Pharisees. Others stare at Jesus with wide eyes. He has not just challenged their question, he has exposed their hearts. He turns from the Pharisees and speaks to the people gathered around. "Listen and understand," he says clearly. "What goes into someone's mouth does not defile them. What comes out of their mouth, that is what defiles them." The crowd murmurs. Some nod. Others remain still as stone. Later, away from the tension of the crowd, the disciples approach him. "Teacher," they say, "do you know the Pharisees were offended when they heard this?" Jesus' reply is calm, almost sorrowful. "Every plant my heavenly Father has not planted will be pulled up by the roots. Leave them. They are blind guides. If the blind lead the blind, both will fall into a pit." Peter, still wrestling with the teaching, asks, "Explain this to us." Jesus sits with them beneath the shade of a fig tree. The afternoon sun flickers through the leaves. "Are you still so dull?" His tone is not harsh, just honest. "Don't you see? Whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and then out of the body. But what comes out of the mouth comes from the heart, and that defiles." He places his hand over his chest. "For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, lies, slander. These are what defile a person. Eating with unwashed hands does not." The disciples fall silent. It is not about dirt on hands, it is about dirt in hearts. Not long after, Jesus leaves Galilee, not because he fears the Pharisees, but because his time is not yet. They travel north toward the region of Tyre and Sidon, Gentile land, foreign soil, strange languages, pagan temples. Far from the familiar dust of Jewish villages and the echo of synagogue arguments, the disciples are uneasy. "Here?" Andrew whispers. "Among Gentiles?" Jesus keeps walking. Ahead lies a woman who will not stop crying out, a woman with a daughter in torment, a woman who should not even dare to approach a Jewish rabbi, yet will kneel in the dust and beg. Because sometimes faith is found, not in the ones who know the scriptures best, but in the ones desperate enough to believe. And so they leave the familiar behind, the crowds, the Pharisees, the arguments about hand-washing and traditions. They walk toward foreign land, where hearts, unclean in the eyes of the world, are about to be seen by God himself. The road beyond Galilee grows quieter the farther they travel. Jewish villages fade behind them, replaced by Greek columns, foreign languages, and statues of unfamiliar gods. The disciples walk close together, uneasy. This is the region of Tyre and Sidon, Gentile territory. To them, this is not home. This is outside the promise, outside covenant soil. Yet Jesus walks as if he belongs here too. They stop near a small house, hoping for rest, trying to stay unnoticed. But even here, word has already traveled. Someone whispers his name in the marketplace. Someone points toward the road. Someone runs. Then she appears. A woman, her hair disheveled, her steps hurried, eyes burning with desperation. She is not Jewish. She is a Canaanite. To most rabbis, her presence would be an interruption. To many, she is unclean. But she doesn't care. She falls at Jesus' feet in the dust. "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is suffering terribly from a demon." Her voice is cracked from crying, raw from nights without sleep. Yet Jesus says nothing. He doesn't reject her. He doesn't send her away. He simply remains silent. The disciples exchange looks. Awkwardness grows. She keeps crying out, again and again, begging. Finally, the disciples speak. "Master, send her away. She keeps shouting after us." Jesus looks at them, then at her. His words come slowly. "I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel." Most would turn away, but desperation doesn't walk away. She drops to her knees again, forehead touching the ground. "Lord, help me." Jesus' eyes rest on her. His next words are hard, sharp like a test blade against stone. "It isn't right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." It's a sentence that would break most hearts. But she doesn't flinch. "Yes, Lord," she says, voice trembling. "But even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Her hands tremble. Her body bows low. But her faith stands taller than any wall between Jew and Gentile. Silence falls. Then Jesus smiles. Not a small smile, but one filled with admiration. "Woman," he says, "great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." At that very moment, miles away, her daughter breathes calmly for the first time in years. The darkness leaves her. Peace settles like dawn breaking into a long night. The woman lifts her head, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. She doesn't need proof. She knows. She whispers, "Thank you," and disappears down the road toward home, toward her healed child. The disciples stand quiet. They've seen miracles before, but this feels different. This miracle didn't start with a touch of his hand. It started with the cry of a mother who refused to walk away. Jesus rises and begins walking south again. The road leads back toward the Sea of Galilee. As they walk, quietness settles among the disciples. Not discomfort this time, but reflection. Peter glances at John. He healed a Gentile. John nods slowly. He heard her, when no one else would. They walk on. Hills roll out before them, the green slopes of Galilee returning to sight. The air smells of fish nets, lake water, and wild barley again. The familiar is back, but something in them has changed. Crowds begin to find Jesus once more. Word travels faster now, through Jewish towns, Gentile villages, even along Roman trade roads. They bring the lame, the blind, the mute, the broken. He heals them. Somewhere in the crowd, a man who cannot speak feels his tongue loosen. A woman who could not walk takes a hesitant step, then another. Children laugh as their fathers lift them high into the air. Old men weep openly, no longer hiding tears behind hands, and still more people come. Food runs out again. Supplies are scarce, yet the need only grows. Another crowd gathers on another hillside. Not 5,000. This time, 4,000 men, plus women and children, hungry, hopeful, waiting. The disciples look at Jesus, remembering the boy, the loaves, the fish, the baskets that overflowed. Jesus looks back at them, not with frustration, but expectation. They know what he is asking without a word. Faith must grow, not just in miracles, but in their hearts. He asks gently, "How many loaves do you have?" The road leads Jesus and his disciples into the region of the Decapolis, 10 cities with Greek speech, Roman influence, and Jewish strangers mixed among them. It's a place where gods are carved from stone, where markets echo with foreign music, and where talk of a Jewish healer has stirred quiet curiosity. It doesn't take long for people to find him. A group of men approach, guiding someone gently by the shoulders. They bring forward a man, deaf since birth, unable to speak clearly. His eyes dart in confusion at the movement around him. He hears nothing, understands little, but he feels their hands on him, urging him forward. The men bow their heads and plead with Jesus, not for themselves, but for him. "Please, lay your hand on him." The crowd watches closely. Some wonder if he will turn away here in Gentile territory. Instead, Jesus steps forward. He doesn't heal the man where everyone can see. He takes him aside, away from the noise and staring eyes. The man follows, unsure, breathing heavily. They stand alone for a moment. Jesus turns to face him fully. He does not speak. What good would words do for someone who cannot hear? Instead, he reaches out and gently places his fingers in the man's ears. The man blinks rapidly, breathing unevenly. Then Jesus touches the man's tongue, lightly, just as one might handle something fragile. He looks up toward heaven. He sighs, a deep, aching sound, as if feeling the weight of all pain in the world. And then he speaks one word, "Ephphatha," be opened. In an instant, the man's ears ring, then clear. His world explodes with sound, the wind, the rustle of grass, birds crying out above, feet shifting on dirt. Tears fill his eyes. His tongue, once thick and heavy, loosens. He speaks. Not broken noise, but words, real, whole words. The men who brought him begin shouting with joy. The crowd hears the change in his voice and turns in astonishment. The once silent man laughs and cries at the same time, clutching his ears as if afraid this new world might disappear. Jesus gently instructs them not to spread the word, but they can't help it. The story races through the Decapolis like fire on dry grass. He makes the deaf hear. He makes the mute speak. He does everything well. And the crowds come back, larger now, from villages and fields, across rocky hills and river paths. Some carry the lame, others lead the blind. Some walk miles with children on their backs. They come hungry for healing, but soon they are just hungry. 3 days pass. Jesus heals, teaches, and touches those no one else would touch. The people stay. No one wants to leave his presence. They sleep on the ground. They listen until their eyelids droop. They whisper prayers into the night. But by the 3rd day, food has run out. Mothers hold children close, trying to quiet their faint cries of hunger. Men sit on the dry hillside, pressing hands to empty stomachs. Some have come from miles away. There are no nearby villages, no markets, no bread. Jesus looks over the multitude, 4,000 men, plus women and children, sitting on the hard ground under the blazing sun. His heart is moved again. I have compassion for these people, he says to the disciples. They've already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them away hungry, they will collapse on the way. The disciples, still holding memories of 5 loaves and 2 fish on a different hillside, glance at each other. But they look around. Rocks, dust, dry land. Where can anyone get enough bread in this remote place to feed them? One of them quietly asks. Jesus looks at them, not with frustration, but with patient expectation. How many loaves do you have? They check among the crowd. 7, they answer. 7 loaves, and a few small fish, not enough, not on any human scale, yet more than enough in his hands. The people wait. The disciples stand holding bread that looks like a joke in the face of thousands. And Jesus reaches out his hands once more. The crowd sits scattered across the rocky hills, their clothing dusty, their faces tired yet unwilling to leave. For 3 days they have stayed, listening to Jesus, watching the lame walk, the blind blink into light, and the mute release their first words. They forgot hunger for a while. But now, hunger remembers them. A child leans against his mother, eyes half closed. A man presses a hand to his stomach, trying not to groan. Some have come from far-off towns in the Decapolis, walking for miles across barren roads. They have no food left to give their children, no coins left to buy more. Jesus looks over them, eyes filled with compassion. I do not want to send them away hungry, he says quietly to his disciples. They might collapse on the way. The disciples exchange uncertain glances. Though they have seen bread multiply before, they still scan the barren hillsides as if food will appear from the rocks. Where could we get enough bread in this remote place to feed such a crowd? One of them asks. Jesus only says, How many loaves do you have? They search among the people, gathering what little remains. 7 loaves, Andrew says, holding them in his arms, and a few small fish. 7 loaves for 4,000 men, plus women and children. The math is impossible, but in his hands, 7 loaves are enough. Jesus tells the crowd to sit down on the ground. They lower themselves slowly, some holding onto each other for balance. The air is still. Dust drifts in the sunlight. The disciples stand before him with the small pieces of bread and fish, unsure and yet obedient. Jesus takes the bread. He lifts his eyes toward heaven. Father, thank you. He breaks it and keeps breaking it, piece after piece, more than could ever come from 7 loaves. He gives it to the disciples. They begin handing it out, first to the group nearest them, tentatively at first, then farther down the hill, and farther still. With each handful given away, more remains in their baskets. Children eat first, pressing soft bread into their mouths. Elderly women smile through tears as they chew slowly. Men who haven't eaten in 2 days are silent, not from politeness, but from awe. Then come the fish, small, salted, ordinary, but in his hands multiplied. Fish for hundreds, fish for thousands. Hands reach out and no one is turned away. The disciples walk among them, their baskets never empty. Across the hillside, the sound of chewing turns into quiet laughter. Conversations rise again. Life returns to weary bones. They don't just get a taste, they eat until full. until stomachs stop aching, until hunger is no more. Finally, Jesus says softly, "Gather the pieces that are left, let nothing be wasted." The disciples walk the hillside, bending down to collect what remains, hands full of bread and fish that somehow are still there. They fill one basket, then another. By the end, 7 baskets overflow, 7 loaves fed thousands, 7 baskets of leftovers remain. Jesus watches the people as they finish their meal, some lying back on the grass, others whispering to one another about the impossible. A few stare at their hands as if trying to understand what they just held. When all have eaten, Jesus dismisses the crowd. They begin to rise, slowly, as though waking from a dream. Some kiss his hands, some bow, some simply walk away in tearful silence, their hearts as full as their stomachs. The disciples lead the way to the shoreline. The lake lies calm, its surface silver in the afternoon light. A boat waits, rocking gently against the shallow water. They climb in, still clutching the baskets of leftover bread, and push away from the land. The wind is soft at first, the water quiet. No storms, no waves crashing like last time. But something else churns among them. Not wind, not water. Hardness, questions, unbelief, not in the crowds, but in the hearts of religious leaders waiting on the other side. Men who will demand signs, men who will refuse to see the bread in his hands as anything more than coincidence. Jesus sits at the stern, looking out across the vast expanse of the lake. The disciples row, and the bread, miracle bread, rests between them in baskets. Yet still, something inside them struggles to understand. Beyond the water, they will soon face more than hunger. They will face unbelief, not from strangers, but from those who should have seen him first. The boat drifts across the water, the last baskets of leftover bread resting near the disciples' feet. The wind is calm, the sky pale with morning light. After feeding thousands again, the silence should have felt peaceful, but it doesn't. The disciples are quiet, lost in their own thoughts. Some stare at the water, others glance toward Jesus, wondering what he's thinking. They reach the shore near Magdala, a familiar fishing village, but the peace doesn't last long. Waiting there are the Pharisees and Sadducees, religious rivals who rarely agree on anything, yet now stand side by side. Their robes are immaculate, their expressions sharp. They step forward, not to learn, but to test him. "Show us a sign from heaven," one of them demands. "Prove your authority." Not a healing, not bread multiplied, not demons cast out. They want something undeniable, fire from the sky, angels in the clouds, the sun turned to darkness. They want heaven to perform on command. Jesus looks at them, not angry but deeply grieved. "You can read the sky," he says evenly. "You look at red clouds in the evening and say, 'It will be fair weather.' You see the morning. Sky dark and threatening and say, 'A storm is coming.'" He pauses. "But you cannot read the signs of the times." Some shift uncomfortably, but others stare back without flinching. "This generation asks for a sign," he says, voice low but firm. "But no sign will be given to it except the sign of Jonah." The Pharisees frown. They know the story. Jonah swallowed, gone for 3 days, then returned. But they don't understand what it means standing in front of them now. Jesus doesn't stay. He turns his back on them and walks away. The disciples follow in haste. Back in the boat, no one speaks for a while. The wind fills the sail. The shoreline fades behind them. Then Jesus looks at his disciples. "Be careful," he says. "Watch out for the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees." The disciples glance at each other. "Leaven? Bread?" Andrew nudges Peter. "He's upset because we forgot to bring bread." Peter whispers back, "We have 1 loaf. Maybe he wanted more?" Whispers ripple through the boat, worried looks. Should they dock and buy some? Should they explain? Jesus closes his eyes briefly, then opens them again, not in anger, but in disappointment. "Why are you talking about bread? Do you still not understand?" The disciples fall silent. "Do you not remember," Jesus continues, "the 5 loaves for the 5,000 and how many baskets you gathered?" 12, someone says quietly. "And the 7 loaves for the 4,000 and how many baskets then?" 7, another murmurs. "If I can feed thousands," Jesus says gently, Do you really think I'm worried about bread? They lower their heads, shame creeping across their faces. Jesus' voice softens. I'm not speaking of bread. Beware the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees, their teaching, their hypocrisy. It spreads quietly, like yeast in dough. It puffs up the heart. It blinds the eyes. Only then do they understand. Leaven is influence, corruption, unbelief wearing holy clothing. They sail on, the boat cutting through the blue water, the wind carrying them north. The hills grow taller, the air cooler, villages farther apart. The Sea of Galilee disappears behind them as they follow the road inland. Jesus walks ahead, deep in thought. The disciples follow, still wrestling with bread, with signs, with faith. They reach the region of Caesarea Philippi, Roman territory filled with marble temples, pagan shrines, and statues carved for gods carved from stone. Idols tower over the city. The sound of foreign prayers drifts from temple courts. Roman soldiers stand guard at the gates. It is an unlikely place for holy conversations. Yet here, surrounded by monuments to false gods, Jesus stops. He turns to his disciples. His eyes search theirs, not with accusation, but with purpose. Who do people say the Son of Man is? They glance at one another. Some say John the Baptist, one answers. Others say Elijah, another says. Or Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. Jesus listens, but his next question is the one that matters. But what about you? Who do you say I am? The air in Caesarea Philippi is cooler, heavy with the scent of stone and running water from the springs nearby. The disciples follow Jesus past towering temples dedicated to false gods, Pan, Caesar, Baal, statues carved in marble, offerings burning on altars, prayers rising to gods who do not speak, do not see, do not hear. Jesus stops near a rocky outcrop where the city fades into wilderness. The disciples gather around, dust clinging to their sandals, their robes brushing against wild grasses. He looks at them. Not at the crowds, not at the priests, not at the idols towering behind, but at the 12 who have walked miles at his side. His voice is steady. Who do people say the Son of Man is? They exchange glances. Andrew answers first. Some say John the Baptist. Others say Elijah, says James. Or Jeremiah, Matthew adds softly. Or one of the prophets come back. Jesus listens, but his eyes are still on them. Then comes the question that cuts deeper than any before. But what about you? Who do you say I am? The wind stills. No one speaks for a heartbeat. The question hangs in the air like a blade suspended between truth and fear. Peter steps forward. There is dust on his face. His heart pounds. But something within him, stronger than doubt, louder than fear, pushes the words out. You are the Christ, he says, voice firm. The Son of the living God. Silence follows, not empty but holy. Jesus' face softens with something like joy. Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, he says, for flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father in heaven. Peter breathes, not realizing he had been holding his breath. And I tell you, Jesus continues, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. The gates of hell will not overcome it. The disciples stare, at Peter, at Jesus, at each other. The words are too large for them to measure. Jesus isn't finished. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. What you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. What you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Peter stands frozen, overwhelmed. But then Jesus' voice becomes quieter, serious. Tell no one that I am the Christ. They don't understand. Why reveal so much, only to hide it again? Jesus steps closer, and the tone of his voice shifts like clouds passing over the sun. The Son of Man must suffer many things. Their hearts tighten. He continues. He will be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and teachers of the law. Peter's brow furrows. He will be killed. The words fall like stones. And on the third day, be raised to life. The disciples are stunned. Suffer? Be killed? The one who walked on waves, who called storms to silence, who fed thousands. How can death be part of his path? Peter steps forward again, shaking his head. Lord, no, this shall never happen to you. Jesus turns to him, not gently. "Get behind me, Satan." The words hit hard. "You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Peter steps back as if struck. His heart cracks under the weight of it. Jesus looks at the rest. "If anyone wants to follow me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow." A cross. Not comfort, not thrones, a cross. "For whoever wants to save his life will lose it," Jesus says, "but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." The wind picks up again, brushing through the trees. The idols of Caesarea Philippi stand silent, lifeless stone in the shadow of the living word. The disciples' faces are pale, caught between revelation and fear. They know now who he is, but they are only beginning to learn where he is going, and whether they are willing to follow him there. The words linger in the air like a wound that will not close. A cross. Deny yourself. Lose your life to find it. No one speaks as they leave Caesarea Philippi behind. The road winds through rocky hills and olive trees, but even the birds seem quieter. Peter walks a few steps behind Jesus, his heart heavy. He meant to protect him, yet Jesus called him a stumbling block. The memory stings like salt in an open cut. They make camp near the hillside that night. A small fire crackles. Shadows dance across their tired faces. No one speaks of what Jesus said. The silence is not empty. It's full of questions. Why must he die? How could the Messiah suffer? What does it mean to carry a cross? Jesus sits apart from them on a stone, eyes fixed on the stars. His face is calm, yet something rests behind his gaze. Sorrow and resolve intertwined. At last he stands and calls them closer. They draw near, the firelight flickering on their faces. "If anyone would come after me," he says, "they must deny themselves, take up their cross daily, and follow me." Daily, not once, not only if it's easy, daily. "For whoever wants to save their life will lose it," he continues, "but whoever loses their life for my sake will find it." The flames crackle. Their hearts pound. "What good is it," he asks, "for someone to gain the whole world yet lose their soul?" The disciples glance at one another, the weight of his words pressing deeper than any parable they've heard. This isn't about stories anymore. This is about surrender, about steps that go forward, even if they lead toward suffering. Jesus' eyes soften. "Some of you standing here," he says quietly, "will not taste death before you see the kingdom of God come in power." They don't fully understand, but the words settle within them like a seed waiting for the right moment to grow. Night deepens. One by one, they drift to sleep beside the dying fire. Only Jesus stays awake longer, praying under the stars. Days pass. They travel through dusty villages and quiet fields. Jesus heals the sick, restores twisted limbs, opens blind eyes. But something in his tone has shifted. Every miracle feels touched by sadness, as though a storm approaches that only he can see. Then, one early morning, he calls for 3. "Peter, James, John, come with me." The others remain behind, still sleeping. The 3 follow him up a steep mountain path, breath visible in the cool air. The climb is long. Rocks shift beneath their feet. No one speaks. They don't know where he is taking them, only that they cannot refuse. They reach the mountain's height as the sun begins to stain the sky with orange and gold. Jesus steps a few paces away and begins to pray. Peter, James, and John sink to the ground, exhausted. Their eyes grow heavy, until something pulls them awake. Jesus is no longer the same. His face shines like the sun. His clothes become white, brighter than lightning, brighter than anything earthly. Not bleached, not polished, glorified. Peter scrambles to his feet, eyes wide. 2 figures stand beside Jesus, men they know from scrolls, from stories whispered by firelight. Moses, Elijah, the law and the prophets, standing with the Messiah. They speak with him, not in thunder, not in mystery, but as friends. They speak of his departure, his exodus, the death he will accomplish in Jerusalem. Peter trembles, overwhelmed. Words spill from his lips without thought. "Lord, this is good. Let us make 3 shelters. One for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah." He doesn't finish. A cloud descends, bright, thick, holy, not like a storm, like heaven itself. And a voice. "This is my son, whom I love. Listen to him." They fall to the ground in terror, faces pressed to the earth. Then a hand touches Peter's shoulder. "Get up," Jesus says gently. "Do not be afraid." They look up. No cloud, no Moses, no Elijah, only Jesus, only Jesus. And though they descend the mountain in silence, their hearts burn with something they cannot name. They have seen the glory of the one who spoke of suffering, and the cross no longer sounds like failure. It sounds like the path of a king. Peter, James, and John follow Jesus down the narrow mountain path, legs still trembling, not from the climb, but from what they just witnessed. Their hearts race, their minds refuse to settle. The image of his face shining like the sun, his robes brighter than lightning, Moses and Elijah standing beside him. None of it feels real, yet they know it was. Jesus walks ahead in silence. Morning light crowns the mountains, mist curls around the rocks. No one speaks. Words feel too small, too human for what they saw. As they descend, Jesus finally breaks the silence. "Tell no one what you have seen," he says softly, "until the Son of Man has risen from the dead." The three disciples exchange uncertain looks. Risen from the dead? They don't dare. Ask more. Not yet. Their hearts are already too full. Far below, the noise reaches them before the scene does. Shouts, arguments, panic. They emerge from the path into chaos. A large crowd surrounds the other 9 disciples. Scribes and religious teachers stand in front of them, voices sharp with accusation. The disciples look exhausted, ashamed. People are arguing. Children are crying. Dust swirls in the heated air. But as soon as the people see Jesus, the shouting stops. Hope flares. They run to him. A man, eyes red, clothes torn, pushes through the crowd and falls at Jesus' feet. "Teacher," he cries, voice cracking, "I begged your disciples to cast out the demon from my son, but they could not." He turns and motions. 2 men bring forward a boy, thin, pale, trembling. Scars cover his arms. His eyes dart wild and fearful. "Please," the father says, tears in his voice. "He is my only child." The spirit seizes him and throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, grinds his teeth, becomes rigid. Sometimes it throws him into fire or water to kill him. "If you can do anything, have compassion on us and help." His voice breaks. Jesus looks at him gently. "If you can?" He repeats. "All things are possible for the one who believes." Immediately, the man cries out, "I believe, help my unbelief." The words hang in the air, raw, honest, desperate. The crowd presses closer. Suddenly, the boy screams. His body jerks violently. He collapses, convulsing, dust rising around him. People gasp. His mother covers her face with her hands. The disciples step back, uncertain. Jesus steps forward. He speaks, not loudly, not theatrically, but with authority. "You mute and deaf spirit, I command you, come out of him and never return." The boy's body arches. A horrible cry rips from his throat. Then, silence. He lies still. A murmur rises. He's dead. But Jesus kneels beside him. He takes the boy's hand. Gently, he lifts him to his feet, breathing, alive, whole. The father sobs, collapsing to his knees. The boy clings to Jesus' robe, eyes wide but clear. The crowd stares in stunned silence. The scribes are speechless. The disciples, relieved yet ashamed, glance at one another. Later, away from the crowds, they ask him quietly, "Why couldn't we cast it out?" Jesus looks at them, not in anger, but in truth. This kind cannot come out by anything but prayer. They fall silent. They understand. Power is not just authority, it is dependency. Not on themselves, but on the Father. As evening begins to fall, they continue walking with him through the Galilean hills. The sky glows red and purple. The scent of fig trees drifts on the wind. Villagers light lanterns one by one. Dogs bark in the distance, but in their hearts something is shifting. They have seen his glory on the mountain. They have seen his authority over darkness in the valley. And now they understand. Following him means both. Mountaintop light, valley shadows, glory and suffering, life and death. Jesus walks ahead, eyes fixed toward Jerusalem. The disciples follow, tired, uncertain, but unwilling to leave his side. Because even when faith trembles, his presence remains. The road from the mountain is quiet beneath their feet. Peter, James, and John walk behind Jesus, still carrying the weight of glory they saw and the fear they felt. The others follow more slowly, glancing often at the boy who was once tormented, now resting peacefully in his father's arms. No one speaks much. The air feels heavy, but holy. They reach a village at the edge of Galilee as the sun leans toward evening. Smoke curls from small clay ovens. Shepherd boys lead their flocks home. Women draw water from stone wells, whispering about the teacher who heals with a word. Jesus walks ahead, unnoticed by most, the hem of his robe brushing the dust. Later that night, when the crowds have faded and lamps flicker within homes, the disciples gather around him in a quiet house. The floor is packed earth, cool beneath their feet. A single oil lamp glows in the corner. They have waited for this moment, away from scribes, away from accusations, away from the noise. "Rabbi," one of them says softly, "why couldn't we cast the spirit out of the boy?" Jesus looks at them, not harshly, but with sorrow and love woven together. "Because of your little faith." They lower their eyes. Some press their hands together. Others stare into the dim light, ashamed. Jesus continues, "Truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." The room falls still. A mustard seed, so tiny it can rest unnoticed on a fingertip, nearly weightless, almost invisible. Jesus holds their gaze as if to say, "It isn't the size of your faith, but the one your faith rests on." They breathe quietly, absorbing every word. Outside, crickets begin to sing. The world is unaware that eternity is unfolding in whispers inside a humble room. Jesus rises, signaling it is time to rest. The disciples lie down on woven mats, though sleep does not come easily. Some pray, some weep quietly, some simply watch the shadows move across the ceiling. Before dawn, Jesus awakens them. They begin walking again, moving south through Galilee. But this time, he does not want the crowds to follow. He speaks to no one on the road, and when people recognize him, he only nods and keeps walking. The disciples stay close. There is seriousness in his steps, like a man walking toward something only he can see. As they travel along the winding path, he speaks to them quietly. The Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men. Their footsteps slow. They will kill him, and on the third day, he will be raised to life. No one asks questions. No one dares. They remember the way he spoke before, about crosses, about losing lives to find them. They remember his shining face on the mountain, then his sorrow in the valley. They do not understand how glory and death can walk hand in hand, but they do understand one thing. He believes it will happen, and so should they. They continue toward Capernaum. The sea comes into view again, its waters catching the morning sun. Fishing boats bob along the shore. Familiar voices call to one another from nets and docks. The ordinary world remains unaware of how close it sits to heaven. On the road, the disciples walk apart from Jesus, whispering among themselves, "Who is the greatest among us?" They think he cannot hear. He hears, yet he says nothing. For now. They reach a modest house in Capernaum, likely Peter's. Jesus enters first. The disciples follow, dust covering their sandals, tension covering their faces. He turns to them. "What were you arguing about on the road?" Silence. They look at the floor. No one answers. Jesus sits down, his expression calm but firm. He calls them closer. They gather like children around a father. He takes a small child, barefoot, hair tangled, cheeks sun-kissed, and places the child in their midst. "Whoever wants to be first must be last of all and servant of all," he says. Then he lifts the child onto his lap. "Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives not me, but the one who sent me." The disciples stare, at the child, at him, at one another. This is not the kingdom they expected. No thrones, no crowns, just faith like a seed. Hands reaching downward, not upward. Hearts small enough to be filled by God. The room in Capernaum is quiet except for the soft crackle of the oil lamp in the corner. The child Jesus placed among them still sits beside him, wide-eyed yet calm. The disciples shift uneasily. Their question, "Who is the greatest?" still hangs in the air, exposed and small in the light of his answer. Jesus' voice is gentle yet firm. Unless you turn and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. He looks around at each of them, not in disappointment, but in invitation. Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. The child leans into his side, trusting, unafraid. The contrast is sharp. Children do not worry about status or power. They depend. They receive. They trust. Jesus places a hand lightly on the child's shoulder. Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives the one who sent me. The room is still. The disciples' ambitions shrink in the silence, but Jesus is not finished. His tone grows more serious. If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. The words fall heavy. Better to drown than to lead a child away from faith. He looks at their faces, at Peter's furrowed brow, John's lowered eyes, Matthew's clenched hands. Woe to the world because of stumbling blocks. They will come, but woe to the one through whom they come. He pauses, allowing the weight to settle. Then he speaks again. If your hand or your foot causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better to enter life crippled or lame than to have 2 hands or feet and be thrown into the fire. The disciples glance at one another. This is no metaphor for comfort. This is urgency. This is the seriousness of sin. Jesus' tone softens once more. See that you do not despise one of these little ones. For I tell you, their angels always see the face of my Father in heaven. He looks toward the door, as though seeing beyond the room, beyond the town. The Son of Man came to save the lost. He tells them a story. If a man has 100 sheep and one of them wanders away, does he not leave the 99 on the hills and go to look for the one that wandered off? They listen, silent. And when he finds it, truly I tell you, he rejoices more over that one sheep than over the 99 that did not wander. Peter breathes slowly. He knows this story isn't really about sheep. It's about them, about him. Jesus continues, in the same way, it is not my Father's will that one of these little ones should perish. A quiet falls again. Then Jesus speaks of forgiveness. If your brother sins against you, go and show him his fault privately. If he listens, you have won your brother. Matthew nods slightly. He has lost and regained brothers before. Jesus goes on to explain how to restore someone gently, how not to shame but redeem, how heaven listens when believers agree in prayer, how forgiveness is not optional, it is required. Peter, wrestling with this, finally asks, Lord, how many times should I forgive my brother? Up to 7 times. Jesus looks at him. Not 7 times, but 70 times 7. Peter drops his gaze. Forgiveness without limit. Jesus tells another story. A king settling debts. A servant begs for mercy over an impossible sum, and the king forgives the entire debt. That same servant later chokes a fellow servant over a small coin and refuses mercy. When the king finds out, he is furious. Jesus finishes, so my heavenly Father will treat you the same unless you forgive your brother from your heart. Silence stretches. The child stands and quietly leaves the circle. The disciples remain still. Some swallow hard. Some stare at the floor. Some think of names, people they need to forgive, people they have offended. Outside, the crickets begin their night song. Lamps flicker in nearby homes. The Sea of Galilee lies calm under a silver moon. Jesus rises. He steps toward the door. The disciples follow. They leave the quiet home in Capernaum behind, hearts unsettled yet stirred. Ahead lies the road south, toward Judea, toward Jerusalem, toward a cross none of them yet fully understand. The morning sun rises over Galilee, casting a soft glow across the hills and fishing boats along the shore. Jesus and his disciples leave Capernaum behind, walking south toward Judea. The road is dusty and familiar, but something in the air has changed. His teachings have become sharper, deeper, less about crowds and miracles, more about hearts, sacrifice, and a cross that waits ahead. More people begin to follow as they walk. Some are quiet, listening. Others speak boldly, eager to prove themselves. One man steps forward, breathless with determination. "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." The disciples glance at him, young, well-dressed, confident. Jesus looks at him with calm eyes. "Foxes have dens, and birds of the air have nests," he says softly. "But the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." The man's expression shifts. He had not expected this answer. He looks down at his sandals, then steps back into the crowd. Another man approaches. "Lord, I will follow you, but first let me go and bury my father." Jesus' reply is gentle but unrelenting. "Let the dead bury their own dead. You go and proclaim the kingdom of God." A third says, "I will follow you, Lord, but first let me say goodbye to my family." Jesus meets his eyes. No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God. Some fall silent. Some quietly leave. They wanted purpose, but not a price. Jesus keeps walking. The road winds through villages where children wave from dusty doorways, and shepherds lead sheep across rocky fields. Some people whisper blessings, others turn away, arms crossed, unconvinced. That evening, they stop near a small village. Farmers are drawing water, and women bake bread over clay ovens. Children gather around, eyes wide, whispering his name. Jesus sits beneath an olive tree, and people approach with questions, doubts, wounds. One man kneels and says, "Teacher, what good thing must I do to gain eternal life?" Jesus looks at him. "Why do you ask me about what is good? There is only one who is good. If you want to enter life, keep the commandments." "Which ones?" he asks. Jesus answers, "Do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not give false testimony, honor your father and mother, love your neighbor as yourself." "All these I have kept since I was young." The man replies, "What do I still lack?" Jesus doesn't look at his robe, his rings, or his fine sandals. He looks at his heart. "If you want to be perfect," he says quietly, "go. Sell what you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me." The man's breath catches. His eyes drop. He owns much: land, livestock, servants, wealth stacked like security against the unknown. And so he walks away. Not because he does not love God, but because he loves something else more. The disciples watch, unsettled. Jesus says, "How hard it is for the rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for the rich to enter God's kingdom." They are shocked. "Then who can be saved?" Jesus looks at them with tenderness. "With man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible." Peter steps forward. "We have left everything to follow you. What then will there be for us?" Jesus answers, "Truly I tell you, at the renewal of all things, when the Son of Man sits on his glorious throne, you who have followed me will sit on 12 thrones, judging the tribes of Israel. And everyone who has left houses or family or fields for my sake will receive 100-fold and inherit eternal life. But many who are first will be last, and the last first." Night falls, stars bloom across the sky. Some walk away, unwilling to pay the cost. Others stay, uncertain, but still following. Not because they fully understand, but because their hearts cannot walk away from the one who speaks like life itself. The road grows quieter as Jesus and his disciples draw nearer to the familiar shores of Galilee. Villages they once passed as strangers now murmur with memory and expectation. Faces recognize him, some with joy, some with suspicion. Yet it is not crowds or miracles that fill his mind now, but the tiredness he sees hidden in their eyes, the weariness beneath their questions, the quiet desperation behind their hope. They reach a hillside not far from the water. The Sea of Galilee lies calm, reflecting the sky in ripples of silver and blue. Fishermen draw in their nets, children chase each other along the shore. The world feels almost peaceful. Almost. Word spreads quickly. He's here. People gather, not running, not shouting, but walking slowly, as if carrying invisible weights. Farmers with bent backs, women with red-rimmed eyes, men whose hands are calloused from labor yet empty of peace. Some come limping. Some are carried. Some come with questions they cannot speak aloud. Jesus stands before them, not on a throne, not in a temple, but on the grass of an open hill. His voice carries gently over the breeze. "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." The words are simple, but they land like rain on parched ground. He continues, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart." A yoke, an instrument of work and burden, yet he speaks of one that does not enslave, but frees. "And you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Some begin to cry, quiet tears, unexpected. Others close their eyes as if the words themselves cradle them. This is not a call to strive harder, to earn more, to be more holy. This is an invitation to breathe, to lay down the weight of being enough. A woman steps forward, tears streaking through dust on her cheeks. "Even me, Rabbi?" she asks. "I have nothing left, no honor, no strength." Jesus looks at her, not as the world sees her, but as the Father does. "Yes," he says softly, "especially you." A man with trembling hands kneels. "Even me? I have failed more times than I can count." Jesus nods. "Come." A young boy with tired eyes whispers, "Even me? I'm afraid all the time." "You too," Jesus answers. "Come." The sun lowers toward the water, coloring the sea in bronze. The crowd sits on the hillside, and Jesus speaks to them, not about power, not about kingdoms, not about rules, but about rest. Rest not just for the body, but for the soul. He speaks of the Father's love, of sparrows and lilies clothed without worry, of a shepherd who leaves 99 to find one broken lamb, of fields where seeds grow while farmers sleep, of children belonging to the kingdom. He speaks not as a king demanding loyalty, but as a friend offering rest. Behind him, the water shimmers. Nets sway gently in anchored boats. A memory stirs in the hearts of the first disciples. This is where it began. A shoreline, a voice across the water. "Follow me." Now, the same voice offers not a command, but a refuge. As evening deepens, lanterns are lit along the shore. Families begin to head home, walking slowly, as though afraid to leave the peace they found here. Some stay behind, sitting quietly, letting his words settle into their bones. The disciples gather around a small fire. The smell of smoke and salt drifts in the air. Jesus sits with them, the flames reflecting in his eyes. No one speaks for a while. The crackle of fire, the soft whisper of waves, the distant laughter of children, these are the only sounds. Peter watches the water and murmurs, "We were fishermen when you found us here." Jesus smiles faintly. "You still are. But now, your nets are different." John asks, "Will they listen? Will they come to you?" "They will," Jesus says. "The weary always do." Night settles fully. Stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Jesus looks toward the distant hills, toward Jerusalem. Soon the road will lead there again, but tonight, by the waters where it all began, he rests and invites the world to do the same. The shoreline of Galilee is quieter than it once was. The same waves lap against the sand. The same breeze carries the scent of water and nets and olive trees. But the people have changed. They are older now. Some who once ran eagerly to hear him now walk with slower steps. Some who once doubted now believe. Others have grown harder, cautious, guarded. Evening settles over the lake. The sun sinks low, painting the water in gold and ember. Jesus stands at the water's edge. The crowds gather, not as wildly as before, but with a stillness deeper than excitement. They wait, not for bread or miracles, but for his voice. A boat is pulled from the shore, just as it was in the beginning. The wood is worn smooth from years of use. Jesus steps into it, the water gently cradling the vessel. The disciples push it a short distance from land, then sit quietly within, their oars resting across their laps. The people remain on the shore, sitting on the grass, on stones, on fishing nets left half-mended. Fishermen, mothers, the once sick, the once oppressed. Children sit cross-legged in the front. Old men lean on their staffs. The light of the setting sun catches their faces. Jesus sits in the boat. The water reflects his image, rippling with every word he speaks. He doesn't begin with a parable about seeds or soil, not with a story of coins or vineyards. His voice is calm, but there is weight in it, like someone speaking while time itself holds still. "You have seen the wind obey," he says. "You have seen the bread multiplied. You have seen the dead rise, the blind see, the lame walk. Yet still, some of you refuse to hear." The people are silent. The kingdom of heaven is near, he continues, but not everyone who hears my words will enter it, only those who do them. He looks across the water at faces he knows. Some were children when he first stood in this boat. Now they are grown, with families of their own. Some he healed, some he forgave, some he called. The breeze grows softer, the first stars appear. He speaks again, not loudly, but every word falls clear. Everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came, the floods rose, the wind beat against the house, but it did not fall, because its foundation was on rock. A pause. But everyone who hears my words and does not do them is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came, the floods rose, the wind struck it, and it collapsed with a great crash. The people listen. Some lower their heads, some quietly nod, some stare at the ground unmoving. The lake grows still, only the creak of the wooden boat and the soft hush of water against the sides can be heard. Then Jesus stands. The time is coming when the boat will leave the shore, when I will go where you cannot yet follow, he says. But I tell you now, so that when it happens, your faith will not fail. His eyes rest gently on the 12. Peter's hands tighten on the edge of the boat. John's eyes glisten. Thomas looks down at his feet. They don't fully understand, but they know his voice never speaks in vain. Jesus turns back to the crowd. Come to me while it is still day. Listen while you can still hear. Believe while your hearts are still soft. No thunder follows. No miracles flare. Only the quiet authority of truth spoken over water. The sun slips lower. The world feels suspended between light and night. Jesus steps off the boat. His sandals press into the wet sand. The crowd parts as he walks onto the shore. Some reach out to touch his cloak, not to be healed, but just to be near him. Fishermen lower their nets. Mothers wipe tears buzz from their cheeks. Fathers lift their children to see him clearly. He passes through them without haste. The shoreline behind him holds the sound of waves and quiet hearts. At the edge of the hill, he stops and looks back once more. The boat rests on the shore. The lake holds the last glow of the sun, and his words linger like an echo over water. Listen, believe, follow. The call remains.